What is it about cold nights that makes us feel watched? Maybe it's the quiet. When the temperature drops and the world goes still, every small sound becomes something to explain. The creak of a floorboard, a shadow at the edge of the yard, the feeling impossible to name, impossible to shake, that you are not quite as alone as you should be. 3 people felt exactly that. On 3 cold nights, they were right. Welcome. If you're joining me for the first time tonight, I'm glad you found this place. Get comfortable. Keep the lights wherever feels right. Some of you, I know, prefer the dark, I understand. Tonight I have 3 stories for you. All 3 were submitted by real people who say these things actually happened to them. Cold nights, quiet houses, encounters with something they couldn't explain, and in each case, something they haven't been able to forget. The first story comes from a woman I'll call Dana. She was alone in her house on a winter evening in Ohio when she heard something that turned her understanding of safety completely inside out. The second story was submitted anonymously by a young man from rural Pennsylvania who took a shortcut home through a field one cold night and found someone standing in the snow. That same someone came back every night for 6 days. The third story comes from a couple in Vermont, Marcus and Ellie, who noticed their dog doing something strange on a series of freezing nights. What they eventually found behind the wall of their basement explains it, and somehow makes it worse. 3 cold nights, 3 real encounters. Let's begin. Story 1. I heard myself come home. Dana was 26 and living alone in the house she'd grown up in. Her parents had moved south the year before, and she'd taken over the mortgage, a deal that made sense on paper but left her, in practice, the sole occupant of a 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet Ohio suburb. She didn't mind it. She had always been independent, always been comfortable in her own company. The house was familiar. The neighborhood was safe. She knew every sound the building made, the way you only learn a house after years of living in it. Every creak of the 3rd stair, every rattle of the kitchen window when the wind came from the west, every particular silence between sounds. She knew this house. She believed that meant she was safe inside it. This was late January, a Tuesday. She'd worked from home that day and spent the evening in her usual routine: dinner, a few chapters of a book, some television before bed. By 9:30 she was already drowsy, and by 10 she was in bed with the lamp on, a podcast playing low through a speaker on the nightstand. She was almost asleep when she heard the front door. The sound was unmistakable. A particular scrape of her key in the lock. She'd been meaning to have it lubricated for months, and then the click of the latch releasing, and the specific creak of the hinges as the door swung in. Then footsteps. It's her footsteps. The exact rhythm and weight of her own walk, crossing the entryway tile and heading toward the kitchen, and the refrigerator opening, the clink of a glass being taken from the cabinet. Then her own voice. "I'm home," it said, exactly the way she said it. The same intonation, the same casual upward lift at the end, said to no one, the way you say it when you're just talking to yourself. The way she said it every single time she came through that door after work. Dana says she did not move for approximately 2 minutes. She lay in bed and processed what she was hearing. Footsteps moving now toward the hallway, slow and completely unhurried, and she ran through every explanation her mind could find. Her parents, her sister in Columbus, a neighbor with a spare key, a stranger who had somehow obtained a copy of her key, someone who had been watching her, Someone who had been standing outside this house long enough and close enough to memorize the exact sound of her coming home. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs. She grabbed her phone. No missed calls, no texts. She opened her contacts and pressed her sister's name, and as the line began to ring, she heard from directly below her at the foot of the staircase her own voice say 2 more words, low, even, unhurried. "I know." Dana went out the bedroom window. She dropped 6 feet to the side yard, landed in the snow, and ran barefoot to the neighbor's porch 3 houses down. She pounded on the door until they opened it. She called 911 from their kitchen in her socks and a t-shirt, shaking from the cold and from something else entirely. Police searched the house for 2 hours. They found no one inside. They found the front door unlocked. They found a glass in the kitchen sink with water still in it, cold, recently poured. They found footprints in the snow circling the exterior of the house, consistent with someone who had been walking the perimeter repeatedly for some time. The prints came from the direction of the alley behind the property and returned the same way. They never identified who had made them. Dana moved out of that house 3 weeks later. She lives now in an apartment building with a doorman, a key fob entry, and neighbors on all 4 sides. She says she still cannot listen to her own voicemail. Something about hearing her own voice played back the cadence of it. The sound of herself saying ordinary things makes her feel observed in a way she cannot fully put into words. Something studied her closely enough to sound exactly like her. She doesn't know for how long. Story 2. The Man in the Field. This was submitted anonymously by someone who was 16 years old when it happened. He asked only that the location be described as rural Pennsylvania. He says he has shared this story with very few people because the ones he told early on didn't believe him. And after a while, he stopped wanting to convince anyone. He grew up on the edge of a small town, the kind of place where most roads lead somewhere else, and the neighbors you have are the neighbors you keep. His house sat at the end of a dead-end lane that backed onto a wide, flat agricultural field. Corn in summer, empty in winter, fenced on 3 sides by old wires strung between weathered wooden posts. There was a gap in the fence near the old grain store, where for years he and every other kid in the area had cut through on their way to and from town. 10-minute shortcut, path he knew in the dark. He took it on a Thursday evening in early December. It was around 8 o'clock, just after dark, and it had been snowing lightly since midday. The field was white and flat and faintly lit by the overcast sky. He was halfway across when he saw the man. The man was standing in the center of the field, not walking, not moving at all. Standing with his arms at his sides, facing the direction of the boy's house at the end of the lane, maybe 150 feet away. Far enough that the details were hard to read, but close enough to confirm the shape. A person, upright, motionless, in the middle of a snow-covered field at 8 p.m. The boy stopped walking. He watched for roughly 30 seconds. The figure did not move, did not turn toward him, did not react to him in any way. It stood perfectly still and faced the direction of the house. He walked the long way home that night, round the perimeter of the field, along the road, an extra 20 minutes in the cold. He told his parents there was someone standing in the field. They looked out the kitchen window and could see, at the far end, a shape in the dark. His father went to the back door and shouted. Nothing happened. His father put on his coat, and by the time he stepped outside, the shape was gone. His parents decided it was a deer, possibly a scarecrow from the adjacent property moved by the wind. The boy knew what a deer looked like. He didn't argue. The man was there the next night, not in the center of the field this time, at the edge of it. It's just beyond the fence line. Same posture, same stillness, same orientation, facing the house. The boy saw him from his bedroom window at around 9 o'clock, looked away to reach for his phone, looked back. The man was gone. Third night, same. Standing just inside the gap in the fence, the gap the boy used as his shortcut home. Fourth night, at the corner of the yard, just beyond the property line. Fifth night, the boy closed his curtains at dusk and did not open them until morning. Sixth night, his dog began scratching at the back door just after 9 p.m., making a sound the boy said he had never heard the animal make before. Low, continuous, almost mechanical. His parents let the dog out. It ran to the center of the yard, stopped, and barked exactly once. A single sharp sound. Then it went completely silent, standing rigid and still for 11 full minutes. His father watched from the doorway. Then the dog walked calmly back inside and lay down by the fire as if nothing had happened. The man was not seen after that night. The boy is now in his late 20s, still lives in the same area, not that house, but close by. He says what stays with him isn't the fear of those 6 nights, it's the direction. Every time the figure appeared, regardless of where it stood in the field or at what distance from the house, it was facing the same way, always facing his bedroom window. Story 3. What Luna knew. Marcus and Ellie had owned Luna for 3 years by the time this happened. She was a 4-year-old border collie.com, well-trained, not given to anxiety. She had never been a nervous dog. She didn't bark at shadows. She didn't flinch at loud sounds. She had never, in 3 years, given them any reason to think she saw things they didn't. This was December in central Vermont. Cold stretch several consecutive nights below zero. The kind of cold that makes you aware of the structure of a house, the way heat moves through walls, the drafts at the window frames, the quality of silence when everything outside is frozen solid. They noticed it on the second night. Luna had stopped eating. Not entirely, she would take treats from their hands, but her food bowl sat untouched each evening, and she was spending most of her time in the basement, not pacing, not whining, just sitting in the northeast corner, facing the wall, completely still. Ellie brought her bed down there. Luna didn't use it. She sat at the wall. Third night, same. Marcus went down at 11 p.m. to check on her, and she was in the same position, in the dark, facing the same corner. She acknowledged him when he came down, turned her head, accepted a scratch behind the ears, and then turned back to the wall. He stood in the basement and listened. He said later that the silence down there was different from the silence in the rest of the house. It's not louder or quieter, just different in a way he couldn't name. Like a quality the air had that wasn't quite sound. Came back upstairs and told Ellie they should look at the corner of the basement. They checked it on the 4th day, while it was still light outside. The northeast corner had a section of drywall that didn't match the rest, slightly newer, slightly smoother, installed at some point after the original construction. The house was built in 1961. They had owned it for 4 years, and had never looked closely at the basement walls. There was no particular reason to. Marcus pressed on the panel and it gave not a structural give, but enough to confirm there was a hollow space behind it. Something was back there. They called their contractor. He came that weekend, cut a section of the panel away, and behind it was an enclosed space, roughly 4 feet by 3 feet, sealed on all sides. Inside it, a cardboard box. Inside the box, wrapped carefully in cloth, a collection of photographs, a series of handwritten letters, and a single child's shoe. The photographs showed a family. The letters, fragile, water-stained, were dated between 1971 and 1974. The shoe was small, a size 4, and had been placed on top of everything else, neatly tied, as if set there with intention. There was no other explanation for the sealed space. No pipe access. No structural reason for the enclosure. Someone had built that wall to put those things behind it and had never come back for them. Marcus and Ellie gave everything to the County Historical Society and had the wall properly sealed. They chose not to pursue the identity of the family in the photographs. They chose not to try to understand why those things were placed there, or by whom, or what happened to the child who wore that shoe. What they can tell you is this. The night after the contractor sealed the wall, Luna ate her dinner. She slept in their bed as she always had. She never sat at that corner again, not once, not for the remaining years of her life. Ellie says she is not someone who reaches easily for explanations she can't prove. But she knows that Luna, an animal with no imagination, no capacity to manufacture fear from nothing, sat at that wall for 3 cold nights and would not be moved from it. She says that counts for something. She has never quite decided what. 3 cold nights. 3 people who are still carrying what happened to them. Dana, who knows something, studied her from outside long enough to sound exactly like her. The boy from Pennsylvania, who never found out what stood at the edge of his field for 6 consecutive nights, always facing the same window. And Marcus and Ellie, whose dog knew something was wrong behind that wall long before they ever thought to look. I am grateful to everyone who trusts me with their stories. If something has happened to you, something cold, something quiet, something you've never quite been able to explain, the email is in the description. I read every single message. Take care of yourselves tonight. If your dog starts staring at something you can't see, maybe don't wait as long as Marcus and Ellie did.